Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about the cancellation of Fallout Van Buren and me. I was watching a documentary, and I'll link it below, on the development of Interplay's Fallout Van Buren, which was to be Fallout 3. It was going to be their first 3D engine Fallout, and what happened. And it was a great documentary, and I was like, wow, someone's collected a lot of the facts all in one place. But there was one fact missing that I expected to be missing, which was my involvement in its cancellation. Now, this is a story I've held off on saying. It's like, what, I'm more than a year into this channel. And I held it off for a few reasons. First of all, most of the team doesn't know that I was involved. It was a very personal thing, and just me and one VP at Interplay really was involved. So most of the team doesn't know about it. And also I know some people like to make every story have a villain. And some of you will now view me as the villain because I assisted in the cancellation of Van Buren. But at the end of this video, I will show you ways you can spin it so that almost anybody involved could be a villain. Because my point is, there isn't one. This is more of an example of what happens in game development and why almost every single question people ask about game development has the same answer: money. So let's talk about the context surrounding my story, because if you've watched all my videos, I could jump right in, but I'm going to assume some of you haven't. So, there's a vice president at Interplay. And he's a really nice guy. I'm going to call him Veep, because I know if I give you names, it's going to just, some of you will just, he's the worst person on the planet. So I'm just calling him Veep. Veep was nice. He and I were friends. I got along with him really well. I admired his ability to convince other people and me to do things. I used to say, wow, if he told me to go to hell, I'd pack my bags and look forward to the trip. He had a 10 charisma. We used to play racquetball. He was one of two people at Interplay who would regularly trounce me on the court. And he did it differently. The other guy was an accountant, and this accountant had a 10 agility. I mean, if these were special characters, Veep had a 10 charisma, but accountant had a 10 agility. No matter where he hit the ball, that accountant was there. He was like, boom, I'm here, I'm left, I'm right, I'm up, I'm down. I don't know how he did it. I couldn't hit the ball anywhere where he couldn't get to. That's not how Veep played racquetball. Veep controlled the court. He'd hit it to the left, I'd run to the left. Then he'd return it to the right, I'd run to the right. Then he'd hit it to the left again, and I'd run to the left, and I'm like, I'm on to you, and I'd start running to the right. And as I'm running to the right, he'd hit it to the left again, and I'm like, oh no. He basically controlled the court, and he controlled me, and he regularly trounced me. It was amazing to watch. I learned more. I've talked about learning from failure. I learned more from the Veep and the accountant. My racquetball game got better from just watching them destroy me than from 100 games with somebody that I would trounce. So I talked about leaving Interplay in 1998. The Veep was the one who did my exit interview. He and I got along. We sat down. We talked again about why I was leaving. He said he understood some of it. I signed my exit papers. He said he was sorry to see me leave. I said I was sorry to go. And it was done. So, if you watched, and that's all I talk a lot about why I left in my Why I Left Fallout 2 video. Then later, if you watch my Arcanum development timeline, I mentioned several lawsuits coming in from Interplay. One to me directly, and then one to Troika. This Veep actually called and apologized for those and said he was trying to get them to stop. The reason I bring them up is one very important thing is the lawsuit against Troika was that we were using source code from Fallout, which I vehemently denied then. I deny now. I went and destroyed all the source code that I had. I even destroyed some source code that led to me developing source code for Fallout. I just rewrote everything from scratch, and I think any programmer here will know how wonderful it feels when you're like, I'm going to spend a few months and rewrite a lot of my foundational code. The reason I mentioned that is the same Veep called me, I think it was in 2002, and he goes, hey, I know you said you destroyed all the source code, but we lost the source code for Fallout. You wouldn't happen to have a copy. And I did it. And I said, are you trying to entrap me? And he goes, no, you know I wouldn't do that. We've lost it. They eventually went and looked and they found it. But that was important because a year later, sometime in the middle of 2003, I think it was early summer, it might have been late spring. My notes aren't dated, but because of events that I know predated it and postdated it, I know it was somewhere in the middle of 2003. Veep called me and he said, hey, would you mind coming over and playing one of our game prototypes? And I'm like, what? Why are you asking me this? And he goes, well, we're making a Fallout game and I'm going to have to cancel it. I don't think they can get it done. So I'm just going to cancel it. But if you could come over and look at it and give me an estimate, there's a chance I wouldn't cancel it. Now, I mentioned this. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this to Leonard, but I remember talking about it with a few people at Troika. And a lot of them were like, don't do it, dude. Just don't go over. Don't get involved. But this Veep knew the one way to get me to do something, which was to say, if you don't do it, bad things will happen to other people. It's exactly what happened when I left Carbine, or when I was at Carbine, where the studio had said, well, if you don't switch from programming director to design director, I'm just going to have to lay everybody off. I have no good defense against these arguments. I'm like, if I don't, not doing something is making a decision and it's leading to a 100% certainty of bad consequences. Where if I do this thing, there's a chance it won't be bad. So I did it. I said, okay, I'll come over. Now, at the time, Troika was literally across the street from Interplay. So I went down the stairs from my office, out through our lobby, across the street, into Interplay's lobby. And they had set up the tech demo on a computer. I think I was in one of the conference rooms there. And it was on their Jefferson engine. You may have seen it. If not, watch that documentary I linked below, and you can see what I played. I basically played it for a while. I talked to a few people besides Veep. I want to say I'm not even going to name who I talked to. I talked to a couple people on the team because I had questions about what I was seeing. I'm like, hey, how many completed levels are there? Which ones are playable? Then how do I load them? What am I seeing that's final? What is just, placeholder? So I asked a lot of questions. I probably played it for about 2 hours. And then the Veep came in. They left and the Veep came in and he basically said, I have one question for you. How long do you think it would take the team to complete this game and make it shippable? Now, I knew a lot of the team. I hadn't worked there in 5 years, but I knew a lot of the people who were working on this. I knew how many people were on the team. I knew what they were good at. And I had just seen the entirety of the game they put together and where the state it was in. And I said, I'm convinced in 18 months you could have a really good game shipped. And he said, could it be done any faster? And I was like, oh, shoot, I've said too long. And I said, well, even if you did a Death March crunch, I don't think you could do it faster than 12. And then you'd be shipping something that was unbalanced and buggy. And the team would be destroyed. So I don't recommend that. And he said, okay, thanks. As we walked out, he basically explained that any answer over 6 months was going to result in him having to cancel it. Meaning the answer I just gave got the game canceled. But he was going to cancel it anyway. He thought it couldn't be done in 6 months. And I just confirmed that to him. So the point of my story here is, do you see how rough game development is? And how ultimately it comes down to money. They were running out of money. He could not afford a development period of more than 6 months. And to me, that time frame is out of the question. So some of you are like, okay, I have to find the villain in this story. Many of you are going to go, it's the Veep. He's the villain. He canceled it. He's the bad guy. To which I would say, I don't know where you thought he was going to get the money to pay for this. Interplay was not doing financially well. They had posted losses, I think, in the previous 2 years. I think Troika was in a better financial footing than Interplay. And we saw how Troika ended. Some of you might go, it's your fault. You shouldn't have gone over there. You should have lied or whatever. And I'm like, well, first of all, I've said multiple times how bad of a liar I am. So that wasn't going to happen. And I'm sure Veep would have seen right through it. And also, if it didn't go over, it was going to get canceled. So I did the Hail Mary thing And I went over there saying, okay, let's hope that my honest estimate will get this thing saved. Some of you, because I've read so many comments, and your lens is it's the team's management. Van Buren's management is squarely to blame. They should have come up with a tighter schedule. Or, and I've seen other people mention this, they should have reused the same sprite engine they made 1 and 2 with. Because they knew that engine. They had previously made Fallout 2 in just 12 months. So they could have done it faster. There are so many what ifs in there. First, would that engine even have been acceptable 5 years later in 2003? And also, had anybody really looked at it since Fallout 2 shipped? So it was already 5 years later, and it was an engine I started in '94. So it's a 9-year-old engine. It's creaky. And then some of you are probably thinking, nope, the team itself, blame them. They probably spent too much time iterating early concepts or doing R&D or they gave too long estimates or whatever. And I think all those are wrong. And not just for the personal reason of you don't want to be blamed for getting Van Buren canceled. And I think none of those people are really to blame. Interplay was running out of money. I do not believe that the money they had left, the game in the state it was in, and the people who were working on it could have completed it within 6 months. And I don't think it would be a game that you would have liked playing. So I'm basically saying I don't think there's a villain, and if there was one, I don't know who it was, and I don't think you do either. As we know, Van Buren got canceled. The people on it, I don't think anybody was laid off. I think people were reassigned to other projects, but over the next few months, a lot of people left. The writing was on the wall. People went off to different projects, different companies. And then Interplay sort of died. I mean, it's still around, but it shut down. It lost its building. It turned off the lights. Everybody was laid off. So the Van Buren was kind of the writing on the wall for that. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to tell that story because it kind of is my last involvement in Interplay Fallout. And I think that's the thing that precipitated Fallout being, as an IP, being auctioned off. So I hope you liked, or at least enjoyed hearing this story.